Hey there, entrepreneurs. My name is Sushant, and welcome to Trip Talks. This is the show where I interview successful e commerce entrepreneurs, business executives, and thought leaders, and ask them questions about their business story, and also dive deep into some of the strategies and tactics that they have used to start and grow their businesses. And today I'm really excited to welcome David Downing to the show. David is the co founder of ChipMonk Baking. ChipMonk Baking is a Houston-based specialty bakery that produces healthy, low-glycemic cookies and other dessert products sweetened with monk fruit and allulose, two naturally occurring sweeteners that don't impact blood sugar. And today I'm going to ask David a few questions about his entrepreneurial journey and some of the strategies and tactics that he has used to start and grow his business. So thank you so much for joining me today at Trip Talks, David. Really appreciate it.
Hey, yeah, thanks for having me.
So very interesting business. I read that the idea for it or the inspiration for it came from your own personal story or struggle with the sugar.
Actually, it came from my co-founder Jose's experience with type 2 diabetes. He and I were roommates back in 2019 when we founded the company, but basically, when he was in university, he was unexpectedly diagnosed with diabetes. His diet was pretty poor, like most college kids, lots of pizza and beer, lots of carbs, sugar, and he noticed that he was having very little energy, falling asleep all the time. When he went to see his doctor about it, the doctor actually said, like, hey, you've got type 2 diabetes. And when that happened, instead of taking any prescribed medications, he decided to attack it via an improved diet. And
Hmm.
so he cut out all the processed carbs, he cut out sugar, and he lived like that for almost a decade before he and I met, and managed to get his blood sugar well under control. And then if you look at him today, he's sort of like a spitting image of a healthy guy.
Hmm.
But of course, dessert was always a struggle for him because most desserts available out there are packed with sugar. And yeah, we were rooming at the time, and he ended up making his own desserts to avoid that sugar crash and all the bad stuff involved there, and made the first chipmunk prototype cookie. And of course, me being next to him on the couch, he gave me some to try, and I kind of have more of a business background, so when I tried it, I was like, hey, maybe we could build a business out of this concept. There's a lot of people in the United States and in the world that have diabetes, they're pre-diabetic, or they're just struggling with reducing sugar in their daily diets.
And when you did maybe some kind of research, like did you find were there any similar kind of products that were using a similar, similar ingredients or that were already in the market catering to this audience with a similar kind of an idea, or was this like a completely original thing?
Sure. I mean, there's been sugar-free kind of desserts for decades that are on the market. A lot of them end up using ingredients that are like really artificial or are kind of just as bad for you as sugar might be, but just in different ways. A lot of brands use sugar alcohols, which can cause stomach issues pretty quickly. Just Google like sugar alcohol gummy bears. You'll find a lot of very interesting scenarios that happen to people. And then, and generally too, I think sugar-free desserts were on the market just were known not to taste very good. I mean, there's a reason there wasn't mass adoption. And so for us, when we sought to create kind of a sugar-free cookie, we really wanted to focus on two things. One was like really clean, natural ingredients that weren't going to have strange side effects or negative impacts that could be as bad as sugar. And two was like the taste. The taste and texture needed to be just as good as a regular cookie. Otherwise, people would feel like they're sacrificing something when they ate our product, and then eventually they would find themselves going back to, sort of the sugar alternative.
So are these two items, the monk fruit and the allulose, um, are these like now well known as a sugar substitute? Because I would assume like these would be more well known because there are so many people who are affected by diabetes.
Mm-hmm.
Are these a substitute that medical doctors would would recommend to people suffering from diabetes?
Absolutely. Monk fruit has been around actually for centuries. It's much more known in kind of the eastern part of the world. It originates in China. It's called monk fruit because the sort of historical story is that monks in China would actually grow it and steep it in their tea. It was known to have antioxidant sort of healing properties. And yeah, so it's been around in the US for quite a bit. I would say probably in the past like 5 years, it's become more mainstream. A lot of American consumers hadn't heard of it, but you started to see some bigger brands start to use it. It's a fully plant-based extract. So it's literally like this gourd that they extract the pulp, they dry it, and you literally put that powder in. So it's very clean. The most kind of similar sweetener in terms of that concept that is very widely adopted in the US is stevia, the stevia leaf. But stevia is known to have sort of a strange aftertaste, and a lot of people not big fans of it. Monk fruit, I think, has a cleaner taste. Allulose, on the other hand, is actually a relatively new, unknown ingredient. I would venture to guess that most American consumers have never heard of it. And a part of that is because it was only approved by the FDA for human consumption in the US, I think back in 2016. And then in 2019, the FDA actually reclassified it from a sugar to a carbohydrate on your package. And that makes a big difference when people are looking at packages and they're trying to cut sugar out. The reason the FDA originally classified it as a sugar, and what's interesting about allulose, is it's actually technically a rare natural sugar. It occurs in almost every fruit in really tiny quantities. Chemically, it is almost identical to fructose, sort of like regular sugar, but one of the carbons in its molecular structure is flipped upside down. And so the human body does not have like I guess you could call it like the metabolic key to actually break that down into calories and get it into your blood in the same way we would with sugar. So it's sort of like this weird natural mutation of sugar that the human body just never evolved to be able to digest. So that one's newer. And what's really exciting about allulose, and I think the reason it kind of differentiates our product and makes it more akin to regular cookies, is because it is so close to regular sugar. Its taste and the way it behaves when you're baking it is very similar to sugar too. So it does things like when you apply heat to it, it actually browns and caramelizes in the same way that sugar does. It retains moisture really well. So you get like kind of these nice, moist, soft baked desserts when you use it. A lot of sugar or some sugar alternatives before then didn't have the kind of chemical attributes that sugar had. And so companies were forced to add in a lot of extra things to, sort of make it look and behave like sugar, versus allulose is just naturally, that's how it is. So we don't need to add in a bunch of strange ingredients to achieve the end result we want.
That is very interesting. So is allulose and monk fruit, are these like available in the market like as sugar substitutes? Because I'm thinking, I'm an Indian, right? So I like Indian sweets. There's lots of them, and I would want the reason I don't eat it because sugar.
Sure.
And I would want like a sugar substitute, something like this that I can, or my family can use to still create Indian sweets, and I can enjoy that. I would think like if from a business perspective, like, maybe there's a much bigger market to educate people on these products and make it a sugar substitute that people buy instead of sugar for
Right.
on a day-to-day basis, rather than just selling cookies made from that.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. We actually do sell our sweetener by the pound so that people can use it in baking, or they can add it to their tea, or really however you would use sugar. Most grocery stores today, you can definitely find monk fruit, or at least monk fruit blended with something else. And then allulose is starting to become more widespread. I've seen it in our local grocery stores. I've actually seen allulose in Costco a couple times. I think one issue when you start thinking about putting these sweeteners out on a mass scale, so that like every consumer can use it in any way that use sugar, is that monk fruit and allulose are relatively rare and expensive to make. Versus sugar, which, I mean, we've been mass producing sugar for hundreds of years. And so I just don't think that there's literally enough production capacity in the world to make enough of those ingredients at this time to fully offset sugar and to get the price where it would be, comparable. I mean, I don't know off the top of my head the price of sugar right now, but I think last time I checked, it was literally 1/10 of the cost of monk fruit and allulose per blend. So that just it makes it difficult to market that to everybody. But I do agree. I think as time goes, as those ingredients get more acceptance in the market, and as companies like ChipMonk kind of focus on selling it as a sugar alternative, you will see kind of more people trading off sugar for those things, and you'll just see it more widely available. You can go to your local, like Indian restaurant and get all those desserts, but they could be made without sugar or without as much sugar.
That's very, very interesting. I'm going to do a little bit more research on this. But
Yeah.
so you had this idea, and how did you think about creating, cookie rather than something else? Like, what were some of the first steps that you took in order to really think about your product and, how you're going to bring it to market?
Right. I mean, in some ways it was kind of simpler than you might expect. Jose made a bunch of different stuff, and out of all the things that he made, the cookie tasted the best. So it was kind of like, hey, we have a head start with this recipe or this formula. Beyond that, I think there's a few reasons we decided to focus in on a cookie. One, cookies are probably the most popular dessert in the United States. Like the chocolate chip cookie, right? It's just such a classic. Everybody is familiar with a cookie. Everybody probably eats dozens of cookies every year. So it's just a very well-known form factor. And when we're coming in with sort of these newer ingredients, new sweeteners, it makes sense to take like a traditional form factor in some ways that people know kind of what to expect, and you're not asking them to make it like yet another leap of faith in trying your product. Like if it were some strange shape or something they've never heard of, and it's got weird sweeteners they've never heard of, then they might not even give you a shot. I would say, from an operations and scaling perspective too, cookies are relatively easy to make early on. I mean, literally, we made it in our apartment kitchen. Anybody who's got like a bowl and a scoop in an oven can make some. And so for us, it allowed us to create a product immediately and start selling it immediately, which allowed us to basically validate whether there was any demand for a product like that, because we could start getting sales, and we could then eventually go to investors and be like, hey, look, even though like we're just making this in our apartment, we've managed to sell X number of dollars, and it just allowed us to scale quicker as well, because it's relatively standard baking processes involved. It's just you need to bring in some bigger equipment, but it's nothing crazy or that's going to require millions of dollars of capital investment to mass produce. So I think that's the main reason why we started with a cookie. I do think as we've gotten bigger, we've definitely experimented with a little more complicated, but maybe perhaps more exciting and differentiated products. And eventually we would like to launch those as well.
So in terms of the initial idea validation, did you just share the cookies with your family and friends, or like did you go to like a flea market and try to sell the cookies there? How did you try to understand like if someone is actually willing to pay for it and they like the taste and things like this?
I think that what you just said there is the key. Is someone willing to pay for this and that someone can't be your mom, and they can't be like your girlfriend or your spouse. Is someone off the street willing to exchange their hard-earned money for the product? And that's what real traction is. And so for us, yeah, of course, we shared it with our friends and our family, and we kind of tried to gather some feedback. But in the back of my mind, I've always discounted that feedback. If I know the person, they're probably not going to want to hurt my feelings. The ultimate feedback is to go out to strangers, make the pitch about the product, and then see if they'll buy it. And then the real kind of ultimate feedback that you want to get for is that they come back and buy again. So we started pretty simple. We were working in like a co-working office building. So there were a bunch of different companies, but they shared this cafeteria. So we just went in the cafeteria every lunch. We started this as a side hustle. We had full-time jobs. And set up in the cafeteria for an hour each day and just like put up a sign that said, like sugar-free, low-carb cookies, put out some samples, and we just tried to sell them for, I think it was like $4 for a pack of 2 cookies. And we did that for a few weeks, and people were willing to pay a lot of money for these cookies. So eventually we moved and kind of expanded that idea to like our local farmers markets here in Houston. So on the weekends, we would set up a tent. These are places where people come to shop, look for artisanal things. And we would just, shout at people, get them to try samples, make our pitch, sold a bunch of cookies, and then also use those as opportunities to gather feedback on maybe there's ways we could improve the product. And then I think really importantly, from a marketing perspective, it taught us like, what are the common pushbacks or questions or concerns that a potential customer might have about this product? And then, we can start creating almost like an FAQ so that when we are asked those questions, or if someone is on our website, like we can immediately resolve the questions and kind of overcome whatever their reluctance is up front. So yeah, those in-person events and sales were really key to kind of proving out traction, but also teaching us how to market the product.
Now, you did briefly mention about getting investment. Did you actually, once you have proven the idea, did you go out to get some investors, or was it like completely self-funded?
So for the first year, when we were basically operating out of our apartment, it was fully self-funded. I think we maybe put in like $10,000 or so, mostly just for ingredients and such. And Jose and I kind of set a goal where we started in February 2019, and we said if we can reach $10,000 a month in revenue by the end of the year, then we should raise some money to either one, build out like a place where we can do our own baking, because obviously we can't operate in our apartment, and we did operate in a shared kitchen for a while, but you can't do that for long. Or money to help us find a contract manufacturer that could make our cookies at scale. And yeah, so that we hit that milestone. And so we kind of attacked the fundraising from 2 different approaches. One, we did a crowdfunding campaign with a local company called Nextseed, which is now part of Republic, which is a pretty big player in the crowdfunding space. And then we did, I guess you call it like a friends and family round, where pretty much anybody that we knew through our careers or family or whatever, we created a pitch presentation, a fundraising presentation, and tried to raise money on an individual by individual level. Some of the investors, though, also were customers of ours. And so you could call them like angel investors. They were high net worth individuals that knew, like, were buying our product. They really liked the product. And so when we kind of made an announcement for the crowdfunding and via email, we had a couple of people just invest kind of individually as well.
How much investment does it take to get a business like this started? Like, are we talking, millions? Are we talking hundreds of thousands?
We raised, I think, a little over $300,000 via those 2 combined kind of processes. I would say the build out of our bakery where we operate today was about $200,000. And then that left us with, an additional 100,000 of what you could call like growth capital, right? Like money we could put into marketing or hiring people. I think we did it really cheap. Like we did a great job. I think most people, if you're building a bakery, it's going to cost you more. Fortunately, we found a really experienced restaurateur here in Houston that had opened tons of restaurants and like built them out. And so he was able to help us be very efficient in our construction. And then the other thing I would say is like, if you're raising money, it's like you always should probably raise twice as much as what you think you need. Because even that $300,000, it wasn't like we ended up having to go back and raise like I think another 100 from investors, and then we recently took out an SBA loan for like $250,000 to continue to fund the company. It's just there's always unexpected costs, and then there's sort of this weird cycle where like the faster your company grows, the more intense the cash or capital requirements can be. And so if your goal is to just like really, really grow, you need to make sure you have a good amount of capital on hand. That's not to say you can't be successful with lower amounts of capital. It's just the growth is probably going to have to come slower, at least in the like specialty food, consumer packaged goods space. Obviously like technology or other industries, it could be very different because your product costs, like once you've developed a product, might be zero.
Did you ever try to go to like a Shark Tank or any of these kind of where it seems like what may be very useful to your company would be more, more marketing or, eyeballs or, more of the education piece in the market, which I think someone with more celebrity power can easily bring. Have you ever tried to go that way?
Yeah, we've applied to Shark Tank a couple times. I think it's just an incredibly competitive process, so no luck there. But obviously, if you are a startup, you should just apply to Shark Tank because the publicity is worth millions and millions of dollars. You don't even need a deal with the sharks to benefit from that. And then, I mean, we've done like some pitch competitions, mostly like locally here in Houston with like the Houston Angel Network, things like that, but nothing too showy. It is a good point though, like as a startup, one thing that can really benefit you early on, especially if you sell a product, that people can buy kind of at the click of a button on the website, is getting good press coverage or what's called like earned media. So basically you get somebody to write an article about you or put you on a TV segment for free, like you're not paying for it. And that can have a huge impact early on. We actually managed to get a pretty large story written about Jose and his experience with diabetes and how that led to ChipMonk in the Houston Chronicle, which is like our city's largest newspaper. And I remember when that went out, it just absolutely blew up our website sales. We were baking nonstop and packing and shipping orders for almost like an entire week just because of that one article, which cost, the article didn't cost us anything. So that's definitely something I would recommend to early stage entrepreneurs with limited resources, is like, if you can get any kind of press coverage, do it. Because it can really give you that like boost of momentum to take you from sort of a side gig to like, oh, this is a real business now.
Definitely. So is your business completely direct to consumer? What channels are you selling from right now?
So our business, I guess you could say we're kind of like a multi-channel. We do about half of our revenue from e-commerce. Within that kind of half, 2/3 is our website, chipmonkbaking.com, and then the remainder is Amazon. We sell on Amazon.com. We do both fulfilled by Amazon, so Amazon Prime, and then we do fulfilled by merchant, where we ship the orders ourselves. The other half of our business is we broadly classify it as wholesale. Basically, we sell larger cases of our cookies to accounts that then turn around and resell those cookies to the end consumer. So we're in grocery stores, coffee shops, there's hotels, gift shops. We're even some other websites that, like weight loss websites. It kind of runs the gamut of things. And then the kind of last piece of that too, which is a little bit interesting because we make our own cookies since we have our own bakery. We do what is called private label manufacturing. So we will make kind of low carb cookies on behalf of other companies, and then we will put it into their branded packaging as well. So like a good example of this is maybe like a big chain of meal prep companies. Like they make meals for thousands of customers a day. Well, they might want to add a dessert option for their customers, and so we can make thousands of low carb cookies and put it into like their meal prep packaging, and then we just sell it like that. It's something unique because we own the manufacturing of the product.
Definitely. I mean, one idea as you were talking about it is like maybe the price point of the cookie is a little too much for that. But like healthcare organizations or hospitals, maybe this may be a good fit for hospitals.
Yeah, hospitals are. I mean, that's an ideal place for us to sell our products. I think, one thing I've learned when it comes to selling food products, though, is there are so many middlemen between you and the end consumer. So you can't just like walk into a hospital and like, talk to whoever's making the food at the hospital and sell your cookies. They almost always use what's called a distributor. Like I'm sure you've heard of like Cisco or US Foods, these big companies. They're always the middlemen between the actual brands and manufacturers of the food and then the physical locations that are selling said food. Which it's sort of like this weird chicken and the egg struggle, because the distributors don't ever want to work with you as a brand until you can say, hey, I've got like 100 accounts that are going to order my stuff. But then the accounts don't ever want to work with you until you have a distributor carrying your product. So it's a huge struggle for an early stage food brand.
One thing that I'm very interested in, so on your website, it seems like you sell through some of these wholesale marketplaces like Fair and Abound and Mabel. There's still quite a few of them. Have you had good success selling through these marketplaces? And I mean, you're in quite a few different ones. Is there a preference? Like, are some marketplaces working better than others, or like what is the difference? Is it just that different marketplaces are catering to different kind of sellers, and so you want to be in all the different kinds of places?
Yeah, it's online wholesale marketplaces. They're very interesting because they're basically like a technology play that's trying to solve that distribution problem I just mentioned. I think all those companies you just mentioned, they're all competing very hard with each other right now to try and capture kind of the market of brands like me and these like wholesale accounts that would want to use the platform. I think it's excellent idea. It's something that's needs disruption seriously. So I'm so happy that those platforms are available. I will say that some of them are far more successful than others. Which is probably just comes down to like how much budget, like money do they have to dump into marketing and to support the platform. For us, if you look at all those platforms, Fair is definitely takes the lion's share of the sales generated. It's probably more than 90% versus all the other platforms. So Fair, whatever they're doing on the back end to get accounts on the platform and engaged, I think is working really well. I do think there's a little bit of differentiation where some of the platforms focus more on like, CPG products that you maybe don't eat, like candles or makeup, and some of them are more like food focused. But it seems like Fair in general is becoming kind of the giant in the room in that space.
So what kind of a business would purchase through Fair? Like, is it going to be like a mom and pop shop kind of a thing, or is it more like an internet retailer that's selling a whole bunch of brands and they want to include your brand in their inventory also?
Pretty much anything you can think of. If your core business is to buy something cheap and then resell it at a higher price to the end consumer, then you could be on Fair. And so, I mean, you mentioned a couple, like, yeah, there's a lot of mom and pa, like small convenience stores that buy from us there. There's juice bars, coffee shops, hospital gift shops. And yeah, there's literally like influencers that run their own live selling pages on like Instagram and stuff, where they'll do like a live sales event. We have a couple accounts like that, and they'll buy a lot of cookies. They're very successful. So it kind of runs the gamut. I think it could be interesting if you know, you were starting a new business, you could go on to Fair and sort of see what's available out there and maybe create a business model, you know, just around that whole concept.
Wow, very interesting. Um, in terms of selling, actually, I wanted to ask you, is there, because these are edible products, is there a shelf life to it, or um, how does someone know if, you know, when, for what period they're actually good to eat?
Yeah, shelf life, when you're a food product, is very important. Usually when you're selling wholesale, right, you need to give the wholesale account enough time in terms of shelf life to be able to resell the product. So what we've done and what most companies will do is they'll run shelf life studies where you can work with like a food scientist or like a lab. You send them samples of your product, and then they'll kind of measure over time what happens to your product from like a microbiological level, but also from like a taste, appearance, smell. And then pretty much you kind of set this point where, okay, the product no longer is delivering the same experience that I would, you know, the ideal experience. That's when you would say, like, this is the shelf life of the product. So for us, our cookies have a shelf life at room temperature of 8 months. So that's when we were running those studies, we said, like, hey, at 8 months, you know, the cookie isn't like bad for you. It's not dangerous or anything, but it doesn't taste as good. And so, you know, it doesn't represent what the product sort of should be. That's kind of how we approached it.
Do you have a preference of, you know, what business model works best for you, or what business model you would prefer, you know, a direct to consumer versus like this wholesale kind of a model? Like, if you're looking 5 years down the road, like, do you have a preference that you want to be in major grocery chains and you just want to work through distributors, or you
Mm.
would still prefer to, you know, ship, you know, three cookies a customer directly?
Yeah, I think wholesale, like in-store, physical store sales, that's where like the lion's share of any major brand is going to be generating their revenue. That's where most people buy those types of things, right? And so I think as you get larger as a brand, that's where your growth is going to come from. And really, e-commerce can only grow so far, especially if you're sticking to just like a single product line. So the way I kind of view it is like, if you're starting out a food brand, e-commerce is the best place to start because the barrier of entry is so low. You can literally make something, you know, small batch, put some bags, sticker it, and sell it. And then you can kind of iterate really rapidly. You learn from it, you improve the product, but it gives you early traction. And what it gives you too is like data and feedback. And so that, you know, as e-commerce becomes a smaller portion of your revenue, it's still really important, I think, that a business maintains that channel and invests a lot into it, because it's ultimately like your listening tool for the end consumer. It's how you interact with your end customer, and you know, how you can improve the product, gather feedback. Because at the end of the day, the end customer is the one buying your product. And so your marketing, everything you're saying needs to be directed to them. I think some brands, like if they're too far disconnected from consumers, they end up doing things or making things that nobody really wants, and then it doesn't work out for them. Like a good example of how we've used kind of our e-commerce data on the wholesale front is everything on our packaging, like literally every word on there, all the call outs, that's based off of customer surveys and direct customer interviews that we did with like our top repeat website customers. We asked them questions like, what occasions of the day do you eat our product? Why did you try us out in the first place? What about our product surprises you? Things like that. And that all kind of got distilled down into, the messaging that we put when the product is on the shelf.
So as an entrepreneur, I'm assuming you are more of the business brains and your partner is more on the product and um, operations side. How do you like what kind of thought processes that you go through on a daily basis? I mean, I'm assuming your thought processes are more around how can I grow the business, right? And doing some of these things like customer surveys and so forth. Um, what are you thinking about on a day-to-day basis? Where is your focus and how do you keep on like where are your ideas coming from?
Yeah, I feel like my focus can shift a lot. I'd say overall, it's probably like two main things though. It's kind of like what is our strategic plan for growth? So like at the highest level, where is company growth coming from? And then that aligns with profitability too, right? Like let's make sure that as we grow, we're doing it in a financially like efficient and profitable way. So I think that's something I think a lot about too. It's like, well, yeah, we've got sales efforts, we've got marketing spend, but like what channels are we focusing on? What types of accounts are we focusing on? What kind of products are we, are we investing in, or are we marketing the most? Those types of things are top of mind for me. I would say the other kind of thing that I think about the most is really like people and the kind of organizational structure and processes behind the scenes. And like, one, are they working as intended? Like, is it working efficiently? Are the people that are in the roles, are they doing their jobs, efficiently? Are they hitting kind of their goals and their metrics? And yeah, and that's sort of, and I guess just a continuous improvement around that too, like mapping out like our operations process, our fulfillment, our sales, our marketing, even like boring stuff like payroll, bookkeeping. What does that look like? Are we doing it in a cost-effective way? And then for me too, because Jose and I literally, we did everything for a very long time. Something I think about a lot too is like redundancy. Am I able to step away from the business and the business can still run? Or like if this key person in operations goes on vacation for 2 weeks, or if they get sick or whatever, or they just quit, do we have backups in place? Do we have things documented? Can we survive? So that kind of stuff is what I think about a lot.
Yeah, that makes sense. In terms of marketing and customer acquisition, both I'm assuming the consumer side looks a little bit different than, the kind of marketing or promotion that you do for wholesales or, can you share a little bit about that? What are some of the things that work well for you? I'm assuming is there a lot of education piece also?
I would say most of our e-commerce customers, they understand kind of our product. That most of our customers are doing some kind of keto or like low carb diet, so they understand sort of the nature of the product. I think the biggest thing to communicate to them is like, one, this product fits into your lifestyle, like it's low carb, it's going to be keto friendly, or if like it's gluten free, it's diabetic friendly, those types of things. And then after that, it's about just like, hey, this product is amazing. Like you've tried these other keto cookies before, these other sugar free desserts before. you probably had a bad experience with them. Well, here's literally 1,000 reviews and a bunch of videos of like influencers doing real live tastings, showing that this product is the real deal. And by the way, like if you're worried about not liking it, we will give you all your money back. That kind of stuff. So I think that's sort of the main focus on the e-commerce side. In terms of like channels like that work the best for us, most of our spend is still in like Facebook, Instagram ads. We've dabbled in like Pinterest, TikTok. We run some quite a bit on like Bing and Google. We've messed around with YouTube. Our whole kind of concept is to just experiment a lot. And then when we find channels that are working, we'll invest more into it. Facebook seems to be our lowest CPA spot right now. Amazon is much lower, but that's sort of a different concept. And then I would say within Facebook, the thing that's working best for us is those kind of influencer video compilations where it's like, here's somebody trying the product and their real objective reaction to it. And then just kind of harping in on those selling points that we mentioned. Another really important piece that we've more recently started is like creating like a landing page specific for your ad traffic. So you kind of hook them in with this ad, and then you send them to a very specific landing page that's meant to kind of like address any questions or issues they might have right up front, and then present them with a really good offer to get them to make that first order and get that product, get them to try the product. And then once we get them to try the product, they're looped into our email and our SMS kind of program, which is pretty automated. And then, most people really like the product when they try it. So they'll come back as a repeat customer. And then that's where we can actually start to make money as a brand.
A little bit about your fulfillment strategy. I see that you do have a free shipping over $60 on your website.
Mm-hmm.
And you did mention that you were doing FBA fulfillment by merchant, and I'm sure you have your own fulfillment channels also. What is the difference between Amazon doing fulfillment for you versus your own channels? Like, is the cost for Amazon fulfillment more or less? And what has been your experience in terms of like the whole experience, customer service, and so forth?
Yeah. So we do fulfillment ourselves out of our bakery, for like our website orders, for example. So we don't work with like a 3PL or a separate party. When we get a website order, it comes through on our computer, and then every morning we pack it up in our warehouse, and USPS comes and picks it up, right? I would say that with FBA, with Amazon, we basically pack up like large shipments and just send it over to Amazon, which is great because it does save us some time. And then Amazon's rates are cheaper than us shipping ourselves. And, I'm sure that their fees are cheaper than the labor cost of us doing it ourselves. The main kind of holdup with Amazon and that like why we, I guess it doesn't generate as much as our website is because we fulfill in-house with our website. It allows us to do a lot more kind of like customization of orders and gives us a lot more flexibility. So for example, we have a product on our website. It's like our cookie bundle, and it's 12 cookies, but you can pick whatever 3 flavors of cookies you want. And then our packing team will literally grab each cookie and build your bundle for you. To do that with Amazon would be really difficult because you would have to like kind of package each, grouping of cookies, and you're paying kind of each time. So it's less flexibility. One thing we do a lot too is because we have our own bakery, we will create like small batch limited release products. We'll do like a specialty flavor, or we've even done like donuts and brownies and like different form factors. And we will make like 400 units and we'll sell it on the website. That drives a ton of traffic, and it, helps increase our sales. That would be impossible to do with Amazon, just because of the lead times involved. And with Amazon, your product needs to be, I would say, much more refined and like kind of optimized before you start, adding it to the platform. So.
By the way, does FBA, can you fulfill orders that you receive through your website using FBA, or is fulfillment by Amazon only for orders that are generated on Amazon?
I'm not sure. I have never heard of that, but I would not be surprised if it's something that Amazon is doing or investing in. I know that Shopify themselves, and we run our website off of Shopify. They have like fulfillment centers, and they have like 3PL services that e-commerce brands can basically send their product to like Shopify warehouses, and then Shopify will ship stuff on your behalf. So yeah, I haven't looked into whether Amazon would do that, but that's kind of their wheelhouse. So I'd be surprised if they didn't offer it outside of the platform.
What does your team look like right now?
Or what? Oh, team?
Your team, yeah.
We've got about 12 people. I would say about half of our team is production related. So they're working in the bakery, buying ingredients, running tests, coming up with new recipes, and effectively making sure that we're putting out like high quality cookies and enough of those cookies to fulfill all our orders. The rest of the team, Jose, my co-founder, his main focus is on like wholesale outreach. So he's kind of like head of business development. He has a couple of folks that help him with outreach on sales, and then like account management, like checking in with all of our existing wholesale accounts, making sure they're being taken care of. And then we've got a few folks that help, kind of like generalists, I guess you could say. So they help with things like customer service inquiries, daily fulfillment of orders, and we also, on like digital marketing, we do have a full-time digital marketing lead who runs all of our paid advertising. They do all of our email, SMS marketing, and then anything on the website like conversion rate optimization or like adding in new products. They're kind of the lead there too. It's a pretty big team.
In every entrepreneur's journey, there's always mistakes made, lessons learned. In your own journey, are there like one or two things that really stand out for you where you thought, hey, this was a mistake made, or I could have done differently, or failure, and what was the learning for you? What can other entrepreneurs learn from it?
Oh man, I've made so many mistakes. I make mistakes on the daily. Some of them have been really expensive. I think a one that comes to mind just immediately costs us money is like making packaging mistakes. Like if you order the wrong sized packaging or like the wrong material, and usually when you're ordering packaging, you're ordering like 10,000 plus units. So that's never really fun. I would say like other mistakes though, or maybe like advice for other entrepreneurs, it comes down to like people. Two things is like, one, hire the right people. Like take that extra time to make sure that whoever you're bringing in on the team, no matter what they're doing, they could literally be just sweeping the floors every day. They need to be like great people. Don't let the pressures of your small business kind of force you into quickly hiring whoever you can first. We've kind of been in situations like that where we're like super shorthanded, and we're like, oh, whatever, like can they stand, like put them in the bakery, that's great. That always blows up in your face in the end of the day. You need to find people who like have the ability to grow, and that they contribute to your overall kind of culture of the team, because that's ultimately like how you build real value, and kind of can grow together. And then I also, on that note, it's like, if you are a leader, if you're the entrepreneur or founder, is make sure you are investing time with your people, again, no matter what their role is. So that's something that I've tried to kind of shift more of my time towards, is like doing one-on-ones with all of our team members, just getting to know them on a personal level, checking in with them, setting goals, both for work, but also like talking to them about their aspirations and their goals outside of work, and seeing if there are ways you can support that, either through the business or just, as a personal like mentor. But I think just getting like that FaceTime is really important to making people feel like they're valued, making them feel like you care about their growth, and it'll help them put in that extra effort that you really need with a startup, because like startups are just, you're always going to be under resourced, you're always going to be overstressed, and so you need people who they're not just coming in to kind of clock in and clock out. They're there because they're excited. They want to be a part of that team and whatever you're trying to do. And as a leader, you have to invest the time to kind of plant the seeds of that excitement.
Definitely. So now we're going to move on to our rapid fire round. And in this segment, I'm going to ask you a few quick questions, and you have to answer them maybe in one couple of words or a sentence or so. So one book recommendation for entrepreneurs or business professionals, and why?
Yeah, I kind of cheated, wrote down some of these things. The one that
No,
came
no,
to
that's good.
mind is a book called Traction by Gino Wickman. And it's basically, it gives you a framework for building more of a process system oriented business that grows beyond just yourself. So I think a lot of times when you're starting a business, or your co-founder, you're literally doing everything for a while, that eventually like you're going to start needing to bring in people and defining processes. And this book gives you a great framework for doing so in an early stage. So a lot of like how I manage ChipMonk is directly taken from that book. I would recommend it.
Okay. An innovative product or idea in the current e-commerce, retail, or tech landscape that you feel excited about?
Product, I'm a big fan of a company called Athletic Brewing. They make non-alcoholic beer, but it's like craft beer. So it's like stouts and IPAs and sour beers. And I would say they taste like 80 to 90% as good as the real thing. But they have half the calories and no alcohol. So for me, like I love to like drink cocktails and beer. But I also recognize that it doesn't, it can impact my performance. It can make me feel like crap. And so during the week, if I'm trying to avoid alcohol, but I'm like stressed and I want to treat myself at the end of the day, I really like their beers because it feels like I'm having, like an IPA, but I'm not I'm not getting all the negative side effects.
Awesome. A business or productivity tool or software that you would recommend, or a productivity tip?
I think the one that immediately comes to mind, because I use it a lot, I think it's a little controversial, is Calendly. It's basically an app that just plugs into your calendar, your Google Calendar, and it allows you to send a link to anybody, and they can schedule time directly on your calendar. It's just the whole like emailing back and forth, like when are you available? When are you available? Like it's such a waste of time. The link and just having someone book time when it works best for them is amazing. I think some people don't like it because it seems a little like I don't know, informal, or like it's cold in a way, like, oh, like book time into my schedule. But for me, it's just about saving time for everyone involved.
Yeah, Calendly is definitely a great product, very useful, simple, and I think so many people need it. It's a great, they've done a really great job. A startup or business in e-commerce, retail, or tech that you think is currently doing great things?
Um, One founder is a guy named Ronak Shah. He's the founder of Obvi. They do like collagen protein powder and collagen protein kind of products. He's just like a really interesting person to learn about e-commerce tactics from. Actually, all kinds of stuff too. He talks a lot about like financial tips and tricks to help fund your growth. But if you like Google him or YouTube him, he's got a few talks, and literally the ones I've watched, I like have a notepad and I jot down all these ideas. And yeah, it sounds like he's grown that brand a lot. And from what I can understand, and not to knock him, it's literally just collagen protein powder. Like there's nothing super unique about it, but their approach to digital marketing has been very successful. So I think that's pretty cool, and there's a lot to be learned from that.
Okay. Um, so I was going to ask you a peer entrepreneur or business person whom you look up to or someone who inspires you. What was it, that individual, or do you have anyone else that you would like to recommend?
I don't know about peers. There's a lot of people. I would say like LinkedIn in general is an excellent place to connect with people doing similar things to you. So I've met a ton of founders on there. There's one guy named Arshad Ball he's the CEO of Amrita Health Foods. His company is very similar to ours. Like they self-manufacture, they make like vegan protein bars. He's a little bit older than me and a little more mature. So like I love checking in with him, and I don't know, he's just a good person to talk to. But I would say like LinkedIn is just such a great tool to find people like that. Yeah, definitely reach out to your peers. I think entrepreneurs, like it's just a tough, it's very
Mhm.
stressful. Sometimes you feel very alone. And so talking to others who may be going through the same thing can be a great way to just maybe release some stress, but also like to generate new ideas for your business too.
Definitely. And final question, best business advice you've ever received or you would give to other entrepreneurs?
I mean, I think that just go back to what I was saying about the people part of your business. Ultimately, your business has to grow beyond yourself, which means you're going to have a team. And it's just, you know, hire very smartly, take time to vet candidates, make sure they'll be a good fit. I would say fire pretty quickly too. Like if it's clear that someone's not going to work out or they're going to detract from the overall culture, um, you need to ask them to move on, and then invest the time into your people. Spend time getting to know them, spend time setting goals, and kind of pushing them to grow beyond just like day-to-day duties. I think all of that doesn't really matter what industry, what you're doing, what you're selling. If you can nail the people part, you'll probably have a successful business.
Definitely. Well, David, those were all the questions that I had today. I really enjoyed speaking with you. Thank you so much for your time and for sharing your story and sharing, some of the strategies and tactics that you have used in starting and growing your business. So yeah, really, really appreciate your time today, and thank you for joining me at Notes.
Awesome. Thank you for having me.
Thank you.
Cool.